Oh, what's happening there?
Hello, Gary. Hello, Gary. I can hear you, Gary.
Can you hear me? I can hear you, fine.
That's Gary Hedge. Some of you are bound to know him for his posts on the Facebook tape groups. Well, we're waiting for Rob. Have you met Rob before?
I haven't. I've spoken to him many times through sort of Messenger and things, but yes, never actually met the guy.
Hi, Rob. Can you hear me?
Hello, yes, I can, Ian.
And that's Rob Brinkworth, also a Facebook poster and a contributor to a past Real Resilience webinar or two. We'll be hearing a lot more wise words on the audio format we love so much when the three of us get together for a chinwag in this Season 2, Episode 1 of the Real Resilience Podcast.
Press play, the Real Resilience Podcast, dedicated to all things real to real.
Yes, we're back for 2023. And lots to tell you about in the world of reel-to-reel tape recorders. I hope the interest we are seeing in them, that's increasing so much here in the UK, is reflected in your part of the world. New machines, new ways of using them, and new users of them is just good news all round. Now, Real Resilience is going from strength to strength. Please take a look at our website, www.realresilience.co.uk. That's www.realresilience.co.uk to see more of what we're up to. The webinars that we've been running for over 2 years now, the presentations at hi-fi shows with the aim of raising the profile of reel-to-reel, and our shop, of which we offer many tape-based related items, such as those 2-pin mains leads for Revox and Stellavox machines, and another 2-pin design that TIAC used on their machines in the 1970s. The big news for UK users is that we have just secured a reseller agreement with Recording the Masters, that's RTM, to supply their products. Now, this agreement was secured at the end of January 2023, so please bear with us for a little while we get sorted out in securing stock and adding this to our website. In the meantime, and I'd love to know, when you need RTM tape, what product, format and the tape width you require it in. It will help me supply you so much better. Now, in one respect, this expansion of Real Resilience is due to sad circumstances, in that, whilst we have acquired all the reel-to-reel business and spares from Brian Reeves Revox, the UK service agent for Revox, is because he sadly passed away in late 2022. I send my condolences to his family and thank them for their help in what must still be a very difficult time for them. My chat with Gary and Rob was due for this reason, the dearth of people qualified to support reel-to-reel. Brian's passing aside, last year I was aware of 3 other people who maintain models from Nagra, Atari and Revox who had decided to, at the very least, slim down the level of support they were offering, in a couple of cases stopping altogether. And this fact is not limited to the UK. You only have to read the social media group posts for any make of machine and you'll realise there is a shortage of people in many parts of the world who know their transistors from their tape tensions and rectifiers from their record heads. So, with this in mind, let's get underway in the first of this 2-parter podcast with some background on who you'll be hearing from, and then we'll take it from there.
All things real to real.
Rob Brinkworth. I'm kind of on the border of northeast Surrey and southwest London, near sort of Reigate, Epsom, that kind of way. I've been interested in tape recorders since I was a kid, and I got a job in a hi-fi shop when I was 15, selling hi-fi, obviously, including tape recorders. So I worked there for a few years, just on a Saturday while I was at school, and then got a place at university doing electronic and electrical engineering. Then I got a real job and a family and stuff like that, and everything to do with electronics pretty much went quiet until I took early retirement, which kind of started off my interest again. I was sort of thinking, well, what am I going to do? I always wanted a tape recorder, so I bought an A77, restored it because it didn't work, bought another one. It's sort of gone a bit silly now. So there's quite a few of them dotted around here.
So my name's Gary Hedge, up in Scarborough, originally from Watford. I've only been up here about 30 years, so technically I'm a southerner. But the whole audio thing was ever since I was a kid. My dad always had reasonably decent hi-fi, always into his music. At school, I was part of the sort of music group that used to do the hi-fis and stereos for school shows, that sort of thing. And it just sort of progressed from there, really. But again, when I moved up here, it went the wayside a little bit. I had to get a decent job, a proper job. But then I worked for a local electrical firm in Scarborough. So it's kind of TVs, videos, washing machines, that sort of thing. And they had a repair guy in there. And I was noticing customers bringing in real, nice sort of 60s, 70s hi-fis. But the guy there was just doing televisions. He goes, oh, no, you don't want that, scrap it. And I was sort of thinking, I could probably pick up on this. I could repair them. And it just sort of sprung from that, really. So I left there and just sort of started up my own business. And then word got around that I was fixing these older systems. And then it's just sort of progressed, really. The whole reel-to-reel thing was purely by accident. So I fancied one myself, and I bought one about a year ago, actually. But it was an Akai, absolutely wrecked. The guy admitted himself, he tried fixing it, burnt the boards out on it. He said, well, while you're here, there's the Akai, he said, but I've got a Revox A77. Brilliant, where is it? He said, you stood next to it. And it was a cardboard box, just full of bits. It was nuts and bolts, all the components, and 2 flat panels. And I went, what happened to that? And he said, well, I bought it to restore it. I've undone it all, and I don't know how it goes back together again. He goes, you can have it for 20 quid. And that's what got me going. I actually built that, and it was an amazing machine. I'm going to visit it tomorrow, actually. It's gone to a friend of mine. And it was a 15-inch a second one as well. It was a high-speed 2-track. And since then, I've just done nothing but reel-to-reels. Words got around, I do them, and that's it. I don't know where these people are coming from, but they're all bringing their reel-to-reels to me.
Rob, do you only stick with Revox or Studer Revox, or do you do any of the Japanese or indeed any of the other English makes or anything like that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I got a couple of ferrographs that I didn't pay for, but basically came about when I bought a Revox and somebody said, oh, do you want this old ferrograph as well for nothing? And I haven't even attempted to look at them. I think there's 2 Model 5s and a Model 6 maybe, so not one of the later ones. So I don't know much about them. I suppose the bravest I ever got was a Nakamichi Dragon, which is a scary piece of kit. But a friend of mine who I've restored quite a lot of Revox stuff for him, his first purchase was a B77 Mark II, and he wasn't happy with it. I think whoever had got it restored and then sold it to my friend had said just do the bare minimum to get it working, which wasn't a great deal, to be honest, and it didn't sound that great. So he gave it to me and said, can you sort of do some more to it? Can you make it right? Which I did, and that was fine. And then he bought a B780 tuner amplifier receiver, which I completely restored, and a turntable, a B791, I think, which I completely restored, and that was good. I've got his B710 cassette deck. I have worked on other makes as well, but I really specialise in the Studer Revox.
And Gary, how about yourself? Is there anything you sort of feel you want to major on or you feel comfortable with? Or
the Japanese ones are lovely. Everyone's got an Akai 4000. Anyone in the world's got an Akai 4000 somewhere. And I started getting these in, and they're lovely little machines. They're dead easy to work on until the mechanics start to go. The cams start shattering on them, the rubbers go. And it's when they get mechanical like that, I don't tend to do them. I sort of not so much walk away from them. I can repair them, but I don't enjoy them. I like the Revoxes are just, everything's modular. You've got a fault with one channel, get the back off, swap the cards over, deduct what the problem is from there, really. So I don't tend to do now the home machines if I can avoid it. If someone comes in and says, look, I've got an Akai, it's one channel's down, I do sort of almost say to them, look, I'll have a look, but, I'm not keen anymore. I've been spoiled with the Revoxes. It's as simple as that. Their build quality and the fact that there's more people, there's more of a fan base for them. So if you want to get parts now, the Revoxes, I think, are a lot easier than all the other makes. That's it, really. But yeah, I would try and do as much as I can, but it's Revoxes for me, really.
Sure.
I'm on my 5th one in less than a year. So, it's, yeah.
Keep them coming on.
Absolutely, that's it, yeah.
From my point of view, my background is I was formerly trained by the BBC as a studio engineer, so looking after the equipment in the studio. I didn't actually press any of the buttons or push any of the faders for the BBC in London, and then I did a spell in one of their local radio stations. I was on base maintenance, so we maintained the equipment, and that's where I was trained. And then, like you, Gary and Rob, I feel comfortable with the Studer Revoxes because what we did. I do some of the Japanese models, the Akais and the TX. I do find some of the TX a little bit finicky, but I don't. But especially the later ones, the 80s type ones.
Someone gave me a Fostex, the 15-inch a second, 7-inch reels. You got about like 17 minutes on a reel. And
Yeah.
I was shocked by the build quality. I always thought Fostex were studio machines, took it apart, 12-volt motors on them, and
Lots of
one
plastic.
circuit board.
Yeah.
That's awful. Yeah, plastic rollers on them.
Yeah.
It looked lovely. To look at the machine, it was a stunning piece of thing. But they take the plastic back off. That's what then alarm bell started ringing, and the back of it was plastic. I'm thinking, this ain't good. And it's all just low voltage stuff, point to point wiring, and no, it's awful. Absolutely awful thing.
I think to give Fostex their due, and if you're an owner of a Fostex machine, they knew their market. They were going for the
correct
entry level
studios.
Home
studios.
Studios.
It was
and
a couple of guitars and a multi-track thing. That's what it was, definitely. Yeah.
And as we're finding with all these machines now, to give again any manufacturer their due, they never expected them to be working 40, 50 years
exactly.
time.
This is it. I know. Yeah. That's it.
So Fostex, you're right. They built them to a price. There were lots of plastic parts and lots of pressed metal bits in them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, Rob, have your experience of those kind of machines like the Fostexes?
I have an interesting little story about that, actually. A very good friend of mine that I've known for more than 30 years used to be a recording engineer for Stock Aitken and Walkman. Kylie Minogue and all those people were being done by them. When a few years ago he said to me, "Oh, what are you doing now you're retired?" I said, "Oh, I started doing tape recorders, Revoxes and Studers." He said, "Oh, God, no, please don't get me in it. I was having bloody nightmare. We used to have and I've got a photograph of him somewhere standing in front of a 24-track A800. And he said we had to run them in pairs because they would go wrong so often. We'd have to record on two machines at once because one of them was bound to pack up. He said, I've had it with that. I don't hate tape recorders. He's a record producer in his own right now, and he's doing stuff. I mean, he's quite often in the top 10 of various hit parades and stuff.
Hit parades, that dates you.
Hit parades, blimey.
There's a terminator. But interestingly, he said, after I stopped working for Stock Aitken and Waterman, when I first started out my own little studio, I got an 8-track Fostex, and he said that was great. It never went wrong.
That wasn't the one I had then.
Find the Press Play podcast on SoundCloud and our YouTube channel. Just search for Real Resilience.
Press Play.
I can't believe those Studers were that bad. They probably they weren't looked after.
They probably didn't pay to maintain them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the other thing now. That's
the
cost. Which brings us on nicely. I'm glad you said that, Rob. That who's going to keep these machines going the world over? I know there are people in, say, Switzerland looking after Studer Revoxes. There are a fair few in America, albeit America's a big place and you've got to sort of travel hundreds of miles. We're in the UK, 3 of us sort of South Midlands and the North. But I know there's certainly people I see posts on South Africa saying, does anybody know anybody in South Africa who can fix these machines? And there's people in Vietnam as well, to name but 2, and Australia as well. Yeah, there's a couple of companies there, but massive, great country. And it's not a case of just dropping it down the road with a couple of hours drive. So how do you see it going? Perhaps say Gary first. Looking after these machines into the future in sort of the next 5, 6, 7, 10 years.
It's interesting. It really is interesting. And at the minute, thanks to the lovely thing called social media, you can, there's little groups around. Obviously, it's sort of enthusiasts where they scrap machines or have old parts kicking about. I mean, I've built a couple of Revoxes using secondhand VU meters and things. And, parts wise, it isn't going to be too bad. There's always going to be some scrap machines around for bits and bobs. It's just the people to do it. And like you say, as things move on, as technology moves on, reel-to-reel goes further back. Vinyl's easy. Everyone's got records. People have got record players. But I think the reel-to-reel thing, it's the machines. You've got the cost of the machines, the cost of the tapes. I mean, I don't know if you noticed on eBay recently, the cost of tapes has rocketed. I don't know why, whether it's because people are, it's back in fashion again. So obviously, people are just stupidly putting the prices up. But yeah, it's just finding the people to do it. I mean, obviously there's sort of us 3. I know of a couple of other guys on Facebook in groups that help out. But like you said, I mean, we're sort of fairly covered-ish, I suppose, in England. Europe, I've got Switzerland. There's a guy doing cases, I think, isn't there? He's doing the cabinets and these one-off custom things.
Just the name dropping Zeus Steiner, if you've ever seen
that's
him.
Yeah,
Tech
I've spoken to him a
trader
few
with
times.
beautiful machines he has. Yeah, lovely chap.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But obviously, you've got good old Australia. You've got the Nagravox, but people are always saying, and in the UK, my VU meters are broken on my A77 Nagravox. Have you worked out how much they are with shipping? You could buy 2 machines with decent VU meters.
obviously the guys who run Agravox in Australia, it's fine for them, mind you. That's why I mentioned Australia. It's a massive country, so you're not, you're flying from one end to the other to deliver it. The other thing, of course, is, and Rob, I think you'll be best positioned to answer this. Gary, you work as a business, don't you? You work in a shop.
Yeah.
But Rob, you're kind of more sort of, and don't take this the wrong way, you mentioned you're semi-retired, but you're more kind of hobbyist, take them on as you need to? Do you actively go out and hunt for machines to work on and push your services? Or is it just a case of if they turn up, I'll work on a sort of third-party machine for somebody?
Yeah, I just take them on as waifs and strays, I don't have any room for any more now. This PR99, for example, I'm working on, he's got a B77, and he first asked me, can you fix my B77? I said, yeah, okay. And when he turned up, no B77, what he brought was a PR99 and an A77 two-track with really good heads in it, and a PR99 Mark III lining out version. So like the Revox Studer version of the ASC model, if you like. And he bought that in case there was any useful parts on it for the PR99 Mark I, which is here.
Right.
So I ended up with 3 machines. So I basically haven't got any room to buy anymore, but I was pretty much just looking for bargains and buying them as they appeared, but I haven't got any room for any more, and I really must try and sell some.
But do you advertise your services in terms of I fix these machines, whether it's on social media, or do people just say, I've heard you've got a collection, about these, could you fix my machine? Is it just as and when, or is it like Gary and I, it's our business and we will, go out and get business?
For me, it's the latter. I don't have a website or any kind of, the only online presence I've got is in Facebook groups and on tapeheads.net, although nothing's really come of that. And I find that's really useful for asking questions, as long as you don't mind getting the abuse from some of the participants there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great, those kind of resources are great to, even I go on Tapehead sometimes, because I've been working on tape machines for 30 years now, and I still don't know everything. And also, touching on earlier, I do Studer Revox, I do the Japanese machines. I don't tend to do the UK ones, but I still don't know everything about particular machines, or they've been modded or that kind of thing. And it's a great resource, the likes of Tapeheads. But I just feel that for people to, you pick your experience up through, and you have as well, Gary, working in sort of electronics background, that kind of thing. But when I was trained by the BBC, I remember we just had an A80, and that's all it was for us to take to bits and put back together. Wow. That's all we did. This thing probably was used in a studio once, but it was a full trolley A80, standard machine that will be used in BBC studios, but its sole purpose in life was just to be taken apart, put back together. That thing, the trim pots must have worn out on it because it was aligned so many times. It was probably when we did tape and training on that, it was probably realigned by 20 guys like 10, 15 times in a week. But to get exposure on those nowadays, to someone to say, my A80 is faulty, what do you know about it? And you go, well, I kind of know about A77s, I'll have a go. Are they going to take that risk and let you sort of take the cover off and start delving around? And that's the issue, is getting that experience. How do you sit with that? Perhaps Gary, if you want to do, a new machine comes in.
Well, this is it. I mean,
how do you sit with that?
Well, see, again, it's thanks to the lovely internet and groups again, isn't it? If there's something you're not sure about, you ask first. You can look up so much stuff. Even on Tapeheads, there's someone there that will advise you. But I'm quite hands-on. I don't mind diving into something, taking it apart, then seeing how it all kind of works and take it from there. But it just, these Facebook groups are amazing. There's so many knowledgeable people out there that aren't doing it for a business. They have full-time jobs, but they're just dying to get their kind of word out there, give the advice, and it helps people like us with the tools going out doing jobs and fixing these machines. But if something strange come along, or I wouldn't be scared of getting the screwdrivers out if there's an issue and just having a go. That's how I am. I wouldn't turn it down.
Even if it was something complicated like sort of the later Studers, or for instance, I've worked on MCI machines for some of those, although they're not as complicated as a Studer, I just feel that I've got a good chance of doing some major damage on this
Yeah, I
thing.
must
I don't
admit,
know what I'm
you sort of
doing.
know yourself, don't you? You sort of
Yeah,
do a risk assessment on your own work, don't you? If you're sort of
yeah,
taking something up and you just think, no, I'll take a step back on this. But
yeah.
there's always someone else that can do it. That's the thing. I think with reel to reels, there's so
Mm,
many hidden people around. You just sort of call on them or find where they are, and they will give you that advice.
mm,
So
mm.
I think servicing them and even say, like you said, these machines aren't supposed to last, are they? I mean, a lot of these ones are we're talking late 60s, 70s machines. And, Revox and Studer never thought they'd last more than, 10, 15 years, probably.
Mm.
And now look,
Fostex, Fostex
they're,
even shorter.
yeah,
How
that's
about,
it, yeah, yeah.
how about you, Rob? I mean, do you sometimes think, I mean, for instance, I had a couple of lovely Revox G36s that it was a guy passed on. His son wanted me to dispose of the machines. And although the mechanics of those machines are fine, I won't do valves. I don't know enough about valves. I was brought up with transistors and ICs, and it's what I feel comfortable with. But how about you? Will you touch those kind of things or use a customer's machine perhaps as a guinea pig, as a learning experience?
I don't think I'd use a customer's machine as a guinea pig, but I'm like you. I have no experience of valve equipment other than watching them glow in my parents' old radiogram. And that's it. I know there's very high voltages involved, and I know a valve is basically does the same kind of thing as a transistor to make it as simplistic as possible. But it's an area that I have no expertise in, and I'm willing to learn if I need. If say an existing customer that I'd done a couple of A77s for said, I've melted and bought this G36 or F36 or something, would you have a go at it? I'd say yeah, but it would be a learning curve for me because I'd have to explore a whole new area of electronics that I've currently got no in-depth knowledge of, other than, but I mean, I know how they work. I know what they do. I know that, things warm up and electrons flow and all that kind of stuff. But in practice, other than not touching them with your fingers when it's all switched on, and there are people around that live and breathe valves and wouldn't lower themselves to work with any transistorized equipment, but it hasn't happened so far. I wouldn't use a customer's machine as a guinea pig, and unless it was a friend of mine and we had an agreement that I'll give it a go and I'll try and learn this area of electronics that had died out by the time I was at university. And that was a lot of years ago.
Any particular machines you won't touch? I mean, I'll lay my cards on the table now. You mentioned ferrograph earlier. I've done a couple of ferrograph Logic 7s, and I just think, sorry to ferrograph Logic 7 owners,
yes,
I don't want to work on them. British machines are just not interested.
They are quite scary. I'm not even sure I'd be brave enough to do a Super 7, but really only because I didn't really feel brave enough to do an A77 until I did my first one. And of course, as soon as I switched it on, it went bang, and the house smelled for a week. But if you've got a bit of background knowledge and the aptitude, and you're willing to learn, it's not just about electronics. It's about understanding how tape recorders work in particular. You couldn't just take to a general electronics expert, even if he was really good at general electronics, and say, can you make that sing for me? Well, no, they can't. They can take out the capacitors that have exploded and stuff like that and change them. And then you say, well, what tape are you going to calibrate it to? They'll go, what? So it's not just one skill. It's no good just being an expert at electronics. You need to understand how tape recorders work too.
How about you, Gary? Any particular machines you won't touch? Someone walks in with something from the 70s or 60s and go,
so I don't mind. I would take an Akai on, be it the rubbery wheels and everything. I don't mind that. Electronics aren't a problem on that. But yeah, I get people wandering in with the very old, the Valve 50s and 60s ones occasionally.
With the Magic Eye.
Absolutely, yeah. I had a Tandberg one. It's a beautiful looking thing that all the schools used to have. They had the Magic Eye Valve thing, and little old lady brought it in. I found this in my loft, and there was no idler left on it and things like that. And I just said, look, no, not really. But I said, well, being realistic, by the time you get the parts for it and put the labour into it, it's not worth it. It isn't.
Exactly.
Even if you're sentimental. If you're sentimental, it's still not worth it. You know, by the time, say, you put the labour and parts in, it could be 200 quid.
Yeah.
You know, she could have bought
Easy.
a little second-hand Akai for that.
And that's the problem I find. I bought it for 50 quid off. I mean, I actually just broke my rule the other day. I had a guy who, it's an interesting story, and I'm going to talk about him. Those of you might know of Joe Meek in the 1960s. He was, he did Telstar. And anyway, this guy recorded with Joe Meek. He was one of his principal guitarists. And he said, I'm after a Grundig TK20. Could you fix one? And I said, quite honestly, you know, it's just, by the time you factor all the costs in and to get it to you, it's just not worth it. So I did actually source him one on eBay and gave it a check over, and I said it works and sent it off to him, and he's happy. But for instance, I had a guy a few weeks ago come into my workshop and said, "Oh, you're living the dream, all these tape machines." I said, "Yeah, a few £100, few $100 a month living the dream. I've got all my rent to pay, all my electricity and that kind of thing." Yeah. Quite honestly, I don't need a machine that's just going to be a time pit that I'm not going to make any money out of, because I know I can service A77s, B77s, even the bigger Studers or the Japanese machines, get them out the door fairly quickly. Yeah. And so we talk about economics there. I'd love to work on some of these older machines and the little magic guys, or maybe the valves.
But they are just the sort of, it's evening, sat at home working on eBay. They're not, you couldn't do them during the day. Like you said, that, you know, your day will go. You made no money, and it's all sat there with all its rubbery bits hanging out and valves not working. So,
or you've got to go back to the customer and go, "This is a doorstop. By the way, can I have some money for this?" And they go, "Well,
I've started taking very small deposits now, because as soon as you ring them up and just say, 'Look, it's not worth it,' oh, can you tip it for me?" So you think you've just spent like 2 hours taking it apart, and you've got to get rid of it. So I've got a guy at the moment who's desperate for a slow speed machine. But they all tend to really be the 60s and early 70s, you know, desktop recorders. And we just can't get a reliable one. They're on eBay, not working for parts. And he keeps saying to me, "Have you found one yet?" I said, "I just can't." I said, "Well, you just play it at 3 3/4 and then slow it down on your computer, you know, just like that."
Have you got anything, Rob, to help out Gary? Have you got anything around slow speed like that?
Gary, you remember the story of the guy with the PR99 who also bought the PR99 Mark III and the A77?
Yeah.
The A77 is a low-speed one.
Is it?
And he just wants to sell it.
Well, there we are then. We shall have a chat after, then. That sounds interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. There we go.
I knew this podcast had a use.
Maybe a deal could be done.
That's it for this episode of the Press Play Podcast, episode 1 of season 2. As I said, it's a 2-parter, so be sure to subscribe wherever you get your pods to be notified when the second part's released. In the meantime, why not take a listen to the box set of Series 1? Or if you want pictures as well, there are the past webinars to watch. These can be found at academy.co.uk. That's cadem.co.uk. Search for Real Resilience, and they can be accessed to watch whenever you want via a yearly membership.
Find Real Resilience on the web at realresilience.co.uk and on our Facebook page, Real Resilience.
Gary, Rob and I will continue our chat about beyond life reel-to-reels, tape loops and real nostalgia on the next episode. Be sure to look Gary and Rob up on the various Facebook groups dedicated to tape that they're members of, and I'm sure you won't have to wait long until they post. So, until then, let's all keep it real.
Rob, while you're there then, this slow speed Revox then, how much you want for it, roughly?
This is recording, by the way. What should I say, Rob?
The legally binding contract here.
Yeah, I can ask the owner. I know there are a couple of options as to whether you want the good heads that are in it